Biden is in Belgium today, meeting with NATO and European leaders after spending the weekend in the UK, where he met with the Queen. All of this coming ahead of Biden's highly anticipated meeting with Russian President Vladimir Putin on Wednesday. But he's not going to be doing a joint press conference because it's not going to be a competition, he said. All right, here with reaction to all of this, plus the latest controversies with the royal family, editor-at-large at thedailymail.com, great paper, Piers Morgan. All right, first we got to deal with one issue. I watched the day you walk off the show, and we've had a great relationship over the years. We really have, and I'm a fan of yours. You have the highest ratings you ever have in the history of the show, and I wanted you back on. Now that you're not back on there, when are you coming back on the air? You're born to do this.
Well, I'm definitely having some very interesting conversations, Sean, as you can probably imagine. There are lots of people that wouldn't mind a piece of the action for somebody who trebled the ratings on that morning show in 5 years, which is what we did. I mean, there was a weird, surreal kind of day on the day I left where, having reached a ratings high, normally you would get invited to a boardroom and presented with a carriage clock. But I got invited to either apologize to Meghan Markle for disbelieving her or leave the building. So I decided to leave the building.
All right, so here's what I'd like to understand. So Meghan and Harry, they go on one of the biggest platforms that you could ever go on, and that's Oprah Winfrey. They give this bombshell interview where they accuse, without mentioning by name, although they clarified it wasn't the Queen, so that kind of leaves Prince Harry's brother and father hanging out to dry as being racist. And yet, on the one hand, he's calling the First Amendment, freedom of speech, bonkers, but he's willing to use the First Amendment along with his wife to trash his own family. I found that quite hypocritical, Piers Morgan.
Yeah, I think it's completely ridiculous. These two want to have their royal cake and eat it. They're very happy to trade off their royal titles, the Duke and Duchess of Sussex, when it comes to negotiating hundreds of millions of dollars with companies like Spotify and Netflix. But at the same time, they want the right to trash the royal family and the monarchy, and therefore the Queen, who's the head of the monarchy, on global television repeatedly now. They keep doing this. And I think it's sickening to people over here in the UK. You know, we've just seen the Queen with the American president, Joe Biden, and you can see what a magnificent lady she is. She's been on the throne for nearly 7 decades. She's a remarkable person who puts duty first. And it seems to me that Meghan and Harry don't even understand the concept of duty. It is rankly hypocritical. I think it sticks in people's gullets over here. And in relation to that interview, we now know that there were at least 17 things that came out of Meghan Markle's mouth, which have now been proven to be untrue. So I don't know what point I'm allowed to not have to apologize for disbelieving somebody who is palpably a liar. It is a farcical situation. And of course, as with all these situations at the moment, the cancel culture, Twitter mob come for you. And they say, well, if you don't believe Meghan Markle, you are a racist. To which I say I've never said a racist thing about Meghan Markle or anybody else. It has nothing to do with her skin color and everything to do with her inability to tell the truth and her rank hypocrisy. And I think it's time those two gave up their titles, stopped whining 24/7, and try to take a leaf out of the book of the Queen, whose nickname, Lilibet, they've hijacked for their daughter. Take a little tip from the Queen. You know, less is more. You know, if you want to be a royal, a member of the royal family, less is more. We're hearing too much of your yapping, too much of your whining. It's time to pipe down.
I am concerned, though, too. Meghan also complained to your employer and to the government. Now, my reading of the laws in Britain, a show like mine, where I'm a talk show host, I do news, straight news, investigative reporting, opinion, culture, sports, I do it all. I'd have problems being a broadcaster in Great Britain. Is that true?
Yeah, it's very difficult. We are government regulated. There's a regulatory body called Ofcom, whose only job it is to basically boss around people on the airways and tell us what we can and can't say. Very different to what happens in the United States, where you're covered by the First Amendment, the same First Amendment that Prince Harry can't stomach, because he only wants the right for the media to say nice things about him, not to hold him to account. And it makes life very difficult. But also, I think at the centre of all this, Sean, is something that I know you've done lots of coverage on, which is this epidemic of cancel culture, which is this sort of very small but vocal group of illiberal liberals. I call them the new fascists, who want to tell us how to lead our lives, how to speak, how to think, what to find funny, what we can enjoy on television, at the movies, what historical figures we can appreciate or not appreciate. And if you deviate one iota from their woke worldview, you must be shamed, vilified, and cancelled. And we're seeing it happening again and again and again. And corporate institutions have to stand up to this nonsense. I discovered after I left the morning show over here, for example, that Meghan Markle had personally contacted my boss, demanding all sorts of things, including an apology. That can't be right. That somebody like Meghan Markle, a public figure, thinks she has the right to dictate the freedom of speech and the freedom of expression and opinion of broadcasters like me, or indeed yourself, on national television. But that's where we've got to. And it's a pretty scary state of affairs, but I think it's certainly a hill worth dying for when it comes to protecting freedom of speech.
I want to get your perception of Joe Biden, because he went to this G7 summit. He's got this meeting with Putin coming up. And my perception is, and I'm very outspoken about it, is that he is weak, he is frail, he is struggling mightily cognitively. I run tapes of him from 2012 and 2016, and today, he's a shell of his former self, in my opinion, and I think the tapes speak volumes. What are the perception of our friends across the pond?
I think the perception of President Biden and his trip to the UK for the G7 summit was it was all fine. It wasn't the kind of noise and chaos and unpredictability of a President Trump visit, which personally I rather missed, actually. I always felt he enlivened these rather dreary affairs where world leaders get together and say boring platitudes. I think there's also a wider issue, Sean, about President Biden, is that I think he sees his job, his role, to sort of calm everything down, as if somehow that's enough. And I don't think it is. When you're dealing with China, we're dealing with Russia, when you're dealing with NATO, when you're dealing with, every issue out there from the pandemic to climate change, whatever, I'm not sure people want to calm America that isn't taking dynamic, proactive action. And whether people liked or didn't like Donald Trump, what I did like about him was his forceful personality, enabling him to cut through a lot of bureaucracy and cut to the quick about issues. And NATO was a good example. They're all with NATO now. Everybody knows that most NATO countries don't pay their bills. We know that because Donald Trump shone a light on that iniquity and thought it was unfair that America should carry the can for so many underpaying European countries. He was absolutely right about that. He was also right about the threat of China. Go back 2 or 3 years and Joe Biden doesn't think China is a threat. Suddenly he does. Well, Donald Trump has been calling